Get started. Alex Bernard asks, any thoughts on how many of us are real players? Is everyone in the simulation an IUOC or some NPCs? Well, Alex, almost all of us are real players. From what I know, the system only plays an avatar when a person experiences serious trauma or is near inevitable death. I imagine anything is possible, but the system typically wants to give as much autonomy as possible. To do otherwise would defeat the purpose of its strategy. Of course, we can take one look at some of the political figures out there and easily believe they're an NPC, but that's for another video. Lexus Ivana asks, love this. Can you do a video going deeper into why we age? Hi Lexus. The reason we age is primarily due to the rule set of this particular simulation. The aging process of the body is simply built into the program of our virtual reality. Remember though, only our body ages. Consciousness does not. Your consciousness can be as pure in your 80s as it was in your teenage years. Interestingly, so many of us are adverse to the aging process, but it is inevitable, and holding attachment to the body can be just as bad as being attached to your material possessions. That doesn't mean you shouldn't treat your body like your temple. You just need to realize that the body is a temporary avatar you are using and will eventually dissipate. But I really do want to make a video on aging because, well, I read a book called Long for This World a while back, and I've read that book 3 or 4 times, and it's one of my favorites. It's basically a science book on why we age, basically what happens inside the cell. So who knows, maybe I'll make that video someday. Bill Cullen says, is mankind not de-evolving? Just look at what has taken place in our realm in the last 3 years. Oh, Bill, I've seen what's been happening out there, and believe me, I look at the alternative media sources. It's just that I don't really, talk about it on this channel. It's a great question, though. In the short term, it can feel like we are de-evolving, but if you study history and see how barbaric life truly was 2,000, even 1,000 years ago, it's not even close. Now, of course, I say this, living in the United States as a white male. But nevertheless, overall, in today's world, we have better hygiene, more rights, and greater access to food and education than we ever did before. Now, of course, there's a lot of evil in the world too, but I think that's because behind the scenes, there's this ongoing battle taking place between the various factions vying for control of the world. And I'm talking mostly about regular people, not supernatural entities. And this battle has caused a lot of turmoil in the world. Stuff I really can't get into on this channel without getting in hot water with YouTube, if you know what I mean. Christina says, why don't you put some beautiful artwork on your front page? That's a great idea, Christina, if you mean my channel art. Yeah, it's kind of simplistic. I made it when I first started the channel, and I haven't really given much thought to it since. But I'll think about putting some cool imagery there. Thank you. Gunsight1, a viewer who's watched, I think, every one of my videos. Thank you, Gunsight. He asks, so what is your take on ghosts? Are they IUOCs that refuse to log off the data stream after death? I am interested in Tom Campbell's take on anything to do with the supernatural, like spirits, aliens, black magic rituals, and even Bigfoot. And if you think about it, when you interview Tom, ask him about supernatural phenomena. That's right, I'm going to be interviewing Tom in February. I don't know the date right now. I'll give you guys the date when I go back and look at my email. But yeah, I'm going to ask Tom some questions. Now, that's a good question, Gunsight. I made a whole video on ghosts, which you guys can watch right here. But yeah, it's basically a soul who doesn't move on to the transition reality and stays around the Earth plane. Now, souls usually stay for several reasons. One is that they don't believe they're dead. They just don't believe it. Or 2, they've become seriously attached to a person or thing they don't want to let go. Or 3, they may have been taken out, can't say the word really, by someone and are trying to exact revenge. It's also not uncommon for souls to remain on the Earth plane for several days after death. Now, sometimes these souls just want to be assured that their loved ones are okay, and they'll attempt to make communication. That doesn't always mean verbal. It could mean a feeling, it could mean a smell, it could mean something else. But once these souls see everything is good, they will move on towards the light and go away. But yeah, I can ask Tom about some of these paranormal experiences. Of course, Tom would say they're not supernatural, they're just natural. Rick the Explorer. We've been having some communications back and forth. Hey, Rick. Rick says, I was hoping I would enjoy being alone, not being grifted upon or in any more drama, to stay out of human society for the next 40 years of my life. Does this mean my soul would de-evolve if I do? Well, it's an awesome question, Rick. I mean, you wouldn't de-evolve simply because you're alone, especially if you are already a low entropy individual, and I believe most of the people that watch my channel are in that camp. However, you may not evolve as quickly because you wouldn't be tested by people, and the majority of life's most important lessons come through interactions with, yes, people. But I understand what you're saying because, Rick, sometimes I think the same way. And I live a fairly isolated life myself. Right now, it's 2:42 a.m. I'm in my apartment alone, and I'm making this video, and I'm loving life. Yet, I do believe if you live in isolation, you can still level up if you focus on meditation, reading great spiritual books, and having a positive attitude. Now, many of the great spiritual masters I've read about spent most of their time in isolation. I mean, they had their disciples, but for the most part, they spent the bulk of their time lost in meditation and drunk on the nectar of the divine. Yes, I said that. Drunk on the nectar of the divine. And if you can meditate and experience such pleasure, I mean, you'd probably be by yourself meditating all the time as well. All right, let's move on. Juicy nuts. Yeah, I said that. Who created the creator? That's his question. That's a juicy question, pun intended, but it would be nuts for me to tell you who created the creator. Sometimes you just gotta be good with knowing you'll never truly know. There are some mysteries that are too deep to be solved. Enough said. Victoria Calvert asks, Chad, I'm a new subscriber, so happy to have found you, but it was only through a link my friend sent to me. What is going on with YouTube? Well, I don't know what is going on with YouTube, Victoria. Censorship at its finest, I suppose? Other than that, what exactly do you mean? Moving right along, Paul Skillman has a question. What could I do if I was not reincarnating? I would like to have something different to enjoy doing. I don't recall any past life. Great question, Paul. When we're not reincarnating, we're usually in the spirit world. Our consciousness never really takes a break. We're always busy learning, communicating, and trying to evolve, because that's what we were born to do. And the spirit world is a whole universe unto itself, replete with a community of other souls, schools for learning, recreation areas, and a lot more. And you can read all about this in Dr. Michael Newton's two first books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, both of which I've discussed many times on the channel before, and I recommend them. I'll post the links to them in the below description. Now, Earth is not the only virtual reality for a soul to incarnate on. Just gotta say that. There are other worlds in other virtual realities as well. But yeah, excellent question. Moving right along, Mariana asks, I just have one question. In the Law of One raw material, he always mentions one and infinite creator. The MBT says it's not. Just curious, what are your thoughts? Right, that's true. Let me just clarify a few things first, so for those people not in the know. In MBT, My Big Theory of Everything by Tom Campbell, which I've predicated my channel around, he sees the larger consciousness system, LCS, as akin